Alright, Chapter 1, Read Actively. Learning Objective. In this chapter you will learn how to use strategy reading textbook, read actively. Before reading, before reading. Activate your background knowledge. During reading, 1.5, check strength for your comprehensions. 1.6, use the SQ3R system. 1.7, highlight effectively. 1.8, use the notion, annotation, and the notion to record your thinking. What is it to record your thinking? What does it take to do well in biology, psychology, history, and business? And answer the questions college students are likely to see. Knowing how to study, you have to like the course. Hard work, background, subject area, ground teacher. Or a good teacher. Students seldom mention reading as an essential skill. Incentive of the reading is hidden factor of the college skill. When you think of the college, you attend classes and labs, complete assignments, study for the taking exam, writing papers, closer look at those effectively. However, reveal of the reading is an important part of each. Reading stays behind the scenes because the instructor rarely evaluates it directly. Grades are based on production, how well you express the ideas, papers, or how well you do the exam. Your reading is primary means of when you acquire your ideas and gather information. Throughout this handbook, you will learn numerous ways to use the reading tool. College skills. Chapter 1 focuses on how actively reading and learning from a textbook with the using the SQ3R method. How to preview a reading text, discover the when already known of the topic. You also will learn how to strengthen your comprehension, identify what is important to learn, using highlighting and noting you as a reader, and most important, you learn to think about your reading as actively engage with the text before, during, and after you read. Strategies for reading textbooks. Use the strategy for the reading textbook for the textbook for too long and impersonal. They are actually carefully crafted teaching and learning system. Because most textbooks are written by professors, the author knows the subject matter, but they also know the student knows the topic. You may have difficulty with and know the best way to explain with textbooks are designed to keep the word instructional lecture that provide with reliable, accurate information to help you practice your skills. In short, textbooks are available to reach over that contributes to your overall success of college courses. Textbook learning aids and how to use them. The key handling of the volume of information presented in your courses is to use the textbook efficiently. This involves using the textbook learning aids and author provided to cover the textbooks are written by a teacher. The numerous contain numerous features to help you learn. Table 1.1 summarizes with the features explains how to use each one. Feature and then how to use it. Preface to student. Read it and find out how the book is organized, what the topics cover, and what learning features contain. Chapter opener may include the chapter objective of the paragraphs or chapter outline. Read it to find out what the chapter is about. Test yourself later. See if you can recall the main points. Marginal vocabulary definitions. Learn the definition on each term. Alright, sorry about that. Marginal vocabulary definitions. Learn definition each term. Create a vocabulary log in a notebook with a computer file. Enter the words you need to learn. Panographs and graphics. Determine the purpose of the important information that they illustrate. Diagrams and charts and tables to know the process. Pretend to they illustrate. Make marginal notes. Practice redrawing diagrams without referring to the originals. Table 1.1 continue. Test yourself questions after sections for the chapter. Always just check to see the answer for the before and going on with the next station. Either check for the recall of the chapter content with the study with the exam. Special interest inserts coverage of the related issue, profit, the people, the critical thinking topic. Discover how to insert the relate with the chapter, the content with the key concept. Do they illustrate? View questions, problem with the discussion questions. Read them once before you read the chapter. Discover them what you expected to learn. Use them after you read the test yourself with the recall. Chapter summary. Test yourself with converting summary statements into the questions using who, why, when, how, and so what. Chapter review quest. Either prepare for an exam, pray for the attention for the items you get wrong. 1.1. Evaluating textbook learning aids. Definitely examining with the task or textbook from one of the other courses. Use the table of 1.1. Analyze the feature of the author. Include the guides you learn. Identify particular useful features. Decide how you will use each when you study. Actively read the key of the academic success. 1-2. Read actively. Reading involves much more than moving your eyes line with the print, more than recognizing words, more than reading sentences. Reading is thinking, is active process of identifying important ideas with comparing, evaluating, and applying them. However, have you ever gone to a ball game and watched with the fans? Most do not sit, watch passively instead of the direct plays and the criticize the calls and encourage the player with the reprimand of the coach. The care enough to get actively involved with the game, just like the interest of the team with the activated readers get involved. The question challenge of the criticize as well, but the understanding of the table of 1-2 contrast with the active strategies of successful readers with the passive ones and the less successful readers. Not all strategies will work for everyone, and experimental to discover them those who are particularly well for you. 1-2 passive active versus passive reading. It shows the active verse and then the passive reading. Table the reading and suit with each of the assignment. Read all assignments in the same way. Analyze the purpose of the assignment. Read an assignment because it was assigned. Adjust the speed to suit with our purposes. Read everything in the same speed. Question idea within the assignment, except whatever is in print is true. Compare and connect textbook material with lecture content. Study lecture notes and textbooks separately. Skim headings to find out what the assignment is above before beginning with the road. Check the length of the assignment that they begin reading. Make sure they understand what they are reading as they go along. Read until the assignment is completed. Read with the pencil hand, highlight, jotting notes, and mark the key of vocabulary. Read. Develop personalized strategies that are particularly effective with the following routine standard method of read all assignments in the same way. Look for the relevance of the assignment of their own lives. Fixate with the memorizing title, terms and definitions solely for the past exam and get a good grade. Engage contemporary issues under the discussion with an open mind. Read emotionally the reading assignments without taking the time carefully to consider the author's key points. Alright, 2 active reading. We would read 2 poems by Maya Angelou for an American literature class. Read the procedures for the next biology lab. Read an article of the Time magazine, this time with the political license, science and structure preparation for class discussion. In those directions, we are to consider each of the following reading assignments. List away actively involved in each assignment. Alright, Chapter 1-3, reading activity before reading, previewing. 1-3, preview before reading. Previewing is the means of familiarizing yourself with the content organization assignment before you read, with the previewing, getting the sneak peek with the chapter of the reading will be about. During this part of the process, you are laying down the groundwork that will help you read more easily, rapidly, as better understand what you read. How to preview reading assignments. Review the following in steps to become familiar with the content organization of the chapter, essay, or article. Review the title, indicate the topic of the article, with the chapter subtitle, with the specific focus of the approach to the topic. Check the author and the source of the article. An essay information may provide clues about the article's content and focus. 3. Read introduction of the first paragraph. With the introduction, first paragraph serve the lead, establishing overall subject, suggesting how it will be developed. 4. Read each bold, save with dark printed headings labeled with the content of each section. Announce the major topic covered. Read the first sentence under each of the major headings, since they often state the main point of the section. Reading the first sentence will encounter most of the key idea of the article. If there are no headings, read the first sentence and several paragraphs per page. If the first sentence seems introductory, read the last sentence. Often the sentence states the restate of the central thought. Note any type of typographical aids, color printed, boldface, italics used with an emphasize with important terminology, definitions distinguished from the rest of the passage material with the numbers 1, 2, 3, letter A, B, C, represented on the list form are special importance. Note any graphic aid, graphic charts, graphs, charts, photographs, tables of the suggestive of the important. Be sure to read the captions of the photograph, the legends of the graph, the charts, and tables. Read the last paragraph of the summary provided with a condensed review of the article of the chapter with the often outline of the key points. 9. Read quickly an end of the article, end of the chapter material that might include the reference, study questions, discussion questions, chapter outlines, vocabulary list. If there are study questions, read them quickly because they will tell you what is important to remember for the chapter. The vocabulary is included. Rapidly skim through the identify with the terms you will learn as you read. Section Interpersonal Communication Textbook Chapter, the discussing types of the body gesture of the reprint with the illustrate how the preview is done with the portion of focus of the previewing are shaded. Read only the portions after you have finished them. Test how you preview the work, completing exercise 1-3. What did you learn from previewing? Body gestures. Non-verbal communication involved with a variety of the channels, including body gestures and especially useful classifications of kinesthetics, a study of the communication with the body of the movement identified with the 5 types of emblems, illustrated with the affect, display, regulation, and adapters. Table of page 36 summary provides example of the 5 types of movements. Emblems are substitute of the word of the body. Movements are rather than specific verbal translations, such as the non-sign of the okay, peace, come here, go away, who am I, be quiet, I'm warning, I'm tired, I'm cold. And then we're just going to read the yellow ones. Illustrators accompany with the literature, illustrate with the verbal message, effective display with the movements of the face to convey emotional meaning of the expression, show of the anger, fear, happiness, surprise, eagerness, and fatigue. And 6, regulators, monitors maintain control speaking with another individual. Type A, 5 type, body types of movement that can identify simple drift that mean different type with different cultures might create with interpersonal misunderstandings. Emblems directly translated from phrases, okay, come here, with hitchhiker signal. Illustrators accompany with a literally illustrate the verbal message. Circular hand movement taking circle with the hand with the part with the talking of something larger. Effect, display of communication, emotional meaning, emotional happiness, surprise, fear, anger, sadness, disgust. Regulators monitoring, maintain control, speaking of other and other. Facial expressions, hand gestures, including keeping slow down, what else happened, adapters satisfy some of the needs, stretching head, chewing on a pencil, adjusting glasses. Alright, adapters, some satisfy some of the needs, usually occur with a conscious aware of their unintentional movements that usually go unnoticed. Self-adapters usually satisfy physical need, but they generally serve to make more of it comfortable. After adapters or body movements make them the response of the current interaction, object adapters are movements that involve the manipulation of some of the object. In this figure 1-3, what did you learn with the previewing? The directions show the kinesthetic state with the communication of the body movement is true, and the nonverbal okay, I'm cold, examples, emblems, true, facial expressions, emotional meaning of the illustration, true, regulators are what you want speakers to do when they're talking and speed up or slow down, that's true, and nonverbal research has identified 5 types of adapters. I'm true. You probably were to be able to answer all of the most of the questions correctly, but the previewing does not provide you with a great deal of information. If you were to return to the past with a textbook, read the entire section, find it easier to do than if you hadn't previewed it. Why previewing is effective? The previewing is effective for several reasons. Previewing helps you make a decision about how you will approach materials on the basis of the discover the assignments of the organization content you select for the reading and study strategies that will be most effective. Previewing posts your mind with a gear that helps you start thinking about what the subject. Previewing also gives the mental outline of the chapter content that enables you to see how the ideas connect since you know the author's head of the reading, but it is easier to have not preview with the previewing, however, it is never the substitute with the careful throughout the reading. Exercise 1-4, previewing. Discrete directions. Assume you're taking the course in contemporary history. The instructor assigned with the following article with the tech instead of the digital periodical with the focuses on the issues related on science, innovation, and culture. Preview that does not read the article, even the procedure described on page 34. When you finish, aim for the question and files. Alright, so we'll read the article. Harvey with a gorilla with a tragic death with raising critical questions about the nature of the zoos. And this was written by Sarah Kramer with on May 29 with a relative of the rare occurrence ended in tragedy. Harambe, a 17-year-old western lowland gorilla, was shot and killed with a Cincinnati Zoo with a botanical garden after a 3-year-old boy fell in the enclosure. The incident has sparked with a head national debate about whether Harvey's death was necessary with what responsible for it. The other important issue raised with regards to the zoo security, specifically with the protect with the enclosure of the small, vast, and unpredictable children, but the emotional nature of the Hammurabi's death that triggered many to ask that there is a foolproof way to keep potential dangerous animals captively, safely, and humanely, and whether it's worth doing so. Why use perhaps the strongest argument of the zoo that they play with a role with the fight against the extinction of the World Wildlife Fund's estimates of 10,000 species go into extinction each year. Zoos can actively fail safe with a separate species with rapidly disappearing in the wild. In fact, some of the species have even saved with its whole extinction through the zoo breeding programs of the reintroduction efforts. Higher profile zoos like the nationally recognized Brookfield Zoo over the outside of the Chicago St. Louis Zoo have entered the same with the devote with the conservation study speed for the bring gathering information and any of the luck improve the life of the wild compartments with significant popular sentiment with the zoos also provide for the benefit of the human public a heightened compassion for the care of the animals, even though with the far-flung place of the thinking with the goes into the zoo and inspires a series of wonder, and children and adults may be the people that may be motivated to step with the help of the protection efforts for the donation volunteer work. While zoos collect a lot of money to save the wildlife, more than $160 million each year, according to the American Association of Zoos and Aquariums, can be exposed with more than 134 million people a year to conservation-focused information and independent research that have yet with a measure of how effective the zoos are motivating visitors and serving protective wildlife, improving animal welfare. Zoos weren't always like this. In the early history of the dark world of the animal welfare of the conservation efforts weren't always with the radar. With the zookeepers of the animal often died cramped cages in the late 1800s. But the new trend started with instead of the keeping animals and pen zookeepers for the mimic of their natural ecosystem, at least for the aesthetically, while not so perfect, the represent the huge shift of the zoo relationship to the animals. Centuries later, the stressed animal with higher death rates with the far left the common but still reality. Biggest improvement of the life of the animals, one of the biggest challenges of the urban zoo and the space for the animals for room large territory of the home ecosystems of the farewell with a small enclosure of the what's more of the life of the animal with the nor constant display with can be grueling and several zoos with the report of the animal suffered with the psychological maladies. We usually think of the distinction human, including obsessive compulsive disorder and depression. Some zoos try to fix by using illusion, tricking the animals into thinking their spaces are larger than they are. Mirrors, diagonal walls, fog machines are meant to simulate the animal's natural environments. Best solution would ultimately be more space with a particular large, wide-range carnivores, ideal protection, human provocation. Zoos have more space and an amenable climate can practice with the landscape immersion while they rely with the optional optical illusions, but actual places include the features of the home ecosystem, grassland, for example. The word with the expensive habit exhibits don't guarantee the kind of the up-close experience visitors have come to expect from the zoos, but as open opinions and animal welfare for the purpose of zoos and involves perhaps the expectations of the zoo experience will too. Increasing visitor safety, relatively uncommon, especially given the number of the visitors the zoos reach every year. Children and occasional adults fall and climbing into the enclosures. Hammurabi's death is still being investigated, but he's still not first to die this way. In fact, 42 zoo animals have been killed since 1990 in the interest of saving human lives. Number include the animals killed for after escaping their delicate balancing act between the connecting visitors and animals, providing sufficient barriers entry, reckless adults, curious children. I think that some has to become some fault placed on the zoo, within the zoo, wrote Deborah Curtin, president of the New England Primate Conservancy. Had the guest for the contributor to the Boston Herald with because something not right with the enclosure of the child with the even to get to the air with the Hammurabi's cage with the Cincinnati Zoo with the outfitted with the moat with the current argue with the insufficient separate with the unnamed boy from the Hammurabi was caught with a camera dragging with the child from the water through the water. People antithetical treatment of the animals told the vice knew with the girl with the habitat should have had a secondary barrier which might have kept the boy with a Hammurabi separated to every half to the climb of the barrier and fell for 10 more feet in the moat with the Cincinnati Zoo with the direct with the year. Thane Maillard, however, told Cincinnati.com that the enclosure known as the Girl of the World considered safely by zoo standards, passed inspection both with the U.S. Department of Agricultural Association zoos and aquarium, and they exhibited and safe of the barrier and safe. Maynard said the zoo it was not negligent. There are also questions of the timing avoiding violence. The zoo officials were notified of the boy entrance of the girl's world with 10 minutes after the fact. the teacher inside with the contact with the sensei about the alleged delay, but did not immediately receive the response. Secondary barriers, like multiple layers of glass and metal frames, but used the several zoos around the country with a better way of notifying the zoo staff that immediately might improve safety. George Hoff, CEO of Hoffet Zoo Designs, emphasized with the safety measure may be made in account with the unpredictable small shoulder interview with the CNN. Kids are kids, but and it's a zoo responsible for the exposure to the safety of the visitors, he said. That means making sure exhibits are child-proof in statement. Released on June 2nd, the zoo announced that it plans to reopen the gorilla exhibit with a new 3.5-foot barrier made out of solid wood, rope netting, but a large debate about the purpose of the design zoo seems far from over in the history of any guide. And it has what the overall subject of the article would be like gorilla, Hammurabi, and children. List one of the value of the zoos. They help the extinction, getting the from species from extinction. Describe what a zoo is used to be like. They used to be non-environmental friendly to the ghosts. They used to be captions. This one question it raised on Hammurabi's incident was the barrier. On a scale of 1-5, easy, verified, difficult to read, expect. I'd give it a 3. Active background knowledge, 1-4. Activate your background knowledge. After previewing your assignment, you should take a moment to think about what you already know about the topic, whether the topic you probably know something about, and this is your background knowledge. For example, the student was about to read an article. Titled Growing Urban Problems, the Sociology class. The first thought that we knew very little about the urban problems. He lived in the rural area, but he thought with a recent trip to a nearby city, remembered seeing the homeless people with the crowded condition of the recollection helped him remember reading about the drug problems, drive-by shootings, and muggings. Activating your background knowledge aids with the reading of the 3 ways. First, it makes the reading easier because you already have through the topic. Thought about the topic. Second, the material is easier to remember because you have the connection with the new information with the already known. Third, the topics becomes more interesting and you can link with your own experiences. However, some of the techniques have activate your background knowledge. Ask your question, try to answer them. If the chapter in biology text out with a human disease containing heading with an infectious disease, sexually transmitted disease, cancer, vascular disease, you might ask. Try to answer such questions following with what can infectious diseases have seen, what I call them, what do I know about preventing cancer and other diseases. Draw your own experience on your own experience. In chapter your business textbook is titled Advertising and Purpose for the Design. You might think of it as several ads you have seen within, analyze the purpose of each of the how it was constructed. Brainstorm, write down everything that comes to mind with the topic. Suppose you about with the read of the chapter sociology textbook for the domestic violence. You might list the type of the violent child abuse or rape. So on. You might read questions such as what caused the child abuse, how can it be prevented. Alternately, you might list an accent with the domestic violence you have heard or read about, and any of these approaches help you to make the topic interesting. 1-5. Activate background knowledge directions. You've one of the 3 strategies listed above discovered what you already know about the value of the zoos, the issuing surrounding zoos. During reading, check with the strength of your comprehension. 1-5. Checking the strength of your comprehension. During reading, your goal is to understand the idea of the presented in the text. Sometimes when you read the material, you can easily understand everything clicks and the idea seems to fit together and makes sense. Oftentimes, the click is noticeable absent. This is when you will need to incorporate strategy will enable you to focus on what you're reading and then comprehend. But important to make connections between the ideas. 1-3, the list of the compares common signals. This is the checking of the comprehensive, but not all signs appear at the same time. Not all signs work. Not all signals work for everyone, but becoming aware of these positive and negative signals will help you gain more control over the reading. Comprehensive signals, positive signal. You feel comfortable with having some of the knowledge about the top of the topic, but unfamiliar with the author assumes you understand it. Positive signal. You recognize both of the words and can figure them out with a context. Negative signal. Many of the words are unfamiliar. Positive signal. You express the main ideas in your own words. Negative signal. You must reread the main idea you the author's language to explain them. Positive signal. You understand what the material was assigned. Negative signal. You do not know what the material was assigned and cannot explain why it's important. You read in a regular, comfortable place. Positive signal. Negative. You often slow down and reread. Positive signal. You're able to make connections, among ideas. Negative signal, you're unable to detect relationship with the organization, not apparent. The positive signal, you're able to see where the author is heading. Negative, you feel that it is struggling to stay with the author and is unable to predict what will follow. Positive signal, you understand what is important. Negative signal, nothing or everything seems important. Alright, you read calmly, try to assess the author's point without becoming emotionally involved, but that's positive. Negative, when you encounter a controversial topic, close your mind and alternately viewpoints and opinions. Alright, 1-6, checking the comprehension of the direction, read the article, Hammurabi's gorilla, tragic death of the rising critical question of the nature view that appears on page 38 and 40 B's, alert with the plot of the negative of the comprehension signal after the reading of the article and for the following questions. On a scale of 1 to 5, very poor, 5, excellent, how would you rate the overall comprehension? I'd give it a 3. What are the positive signals did you sense? Basically I had, I thought I connected, I did the, what are the negative signals did you experience? And what in section comprehensive strength, list of paragraph numbers, did you feel any time when the loss of word or loss on the comprehension? If so, go back and part with what caused the loss. Those kind of questions. Alright, ways to strengthen your comprehension. Here are some suggestions of how to realize that you need to strengthen your comprehension. Analyze the time and place with which you are reading. If you have been reading with a studying with several hours, mental fatigue may solve the problem. If you are reading with a play with a distraction and interruptions, you might not be able to understand what you are reading. 2. Rephrase with each of the paragraph in your own words. You might need to approach the complicated material sentence by sentence, expressing each in your own words. Read aloud sentences or sections that are particularly difficult. Reading aloud sometimes makes the complicated material easier to understand. Read difficult, complicated sections. In fact, at times, several readings are appropriate when necessary. Slow down with your reading rate. On occasion, simple reading more or less slowly, carefully will provide you with a needed boost of the comprehension. Write around question. Next to headings, refer to the question frequently. Jot them down. Understand the answer. Write with a brief outline with a major point that will help you to see overall organization progression of the ideas. Highlight key ideas. After reading this section, go back and think about with the underlining what is important, underlying forces, sort with the important, with the sorting process, the build of the comprehension. Recall, refer to section 1-7, the suggestion on how to highlight effectively 9. Write notes on the margin. Explain with a rephrase with the difficultly complicated ideas or sections. Determine whether the large of the background knowledge. Comprehension of the difficult of the times lack of the essential information of the writer. Assume that they have. Suppose you have the reading a section political science text in which the other describe the implication of the balance of the power in the third world. If you do not understand the concept of the balance of the power, your comprehension will break down. When the lack of the background information, you take an immediate step to the correct with the problem. Consult other sections of your textbook with a glossary and index. Obtain with the more basic text with a review of the fundamental principle of the concept. Consult reference material, encyclopedia, subject, biographical dictionaries. Ask your instructor recommendation, additional source for the guidebooks or review texts. Using the SQ3R reading system for learning from textbooks. Using the SQ3R system, reading is more than just scanning the words on page and thinking or learning process that enables you to comprehend retaining information. The SQ3R is an established method for the actively reading as you study, but instead of the reading know and studying later when an exam is schedule. The SQ3R method enables you to integrate reading and learning about you. The 5 steps listed below by you. The SQ3R you will strengthen your comprehension. Remember more than what you read. You need less time with the pray for the extra exam of the big discouraged, but you don't see the dramatic result of the first time you use it. It may take a review practice session to get used to the system. Free to adapt yourself with the SQ3R method to see how to learn and type of the material you've been studying. For example, if writing helps you with recall information, you might add outline step to make with a review step with a review outline step. If you're studying a course where the terminology is especially important in the study of the biology, then you could add a vocabulary check step. Strategies outlining, mapping, summarizing, free phasing are covered in details in chapter 2. Steps in SQ3R survey. Before becoming familiar with the overall content organization material, you can step 3 video on page 34. Questions. Ask questions of the material that if you expect to answer, be able to answer as you read. You read each successive heading, turn it into the guide question. Read. As you read each section, actively search for the answers of the guide of the question. When you find the answers, underline with the mark of the portion of the text concisely with the date of the information. Recite. Probably the most important part of the system. Recite means after each section, after each major heading, you should stop and look away from the page to try to remember the answer to your question. Unable to remember it, look back at the page, read the material, the text yourself again, looking away from the page, reflecting, reciting the answer to your question. And review immediately after you finish reading. We'll go back through the material again, reading headings and summaries. As you read each heading, recall your question and test yourself to see whether you can still remember the answer. If you cannot read the section once you have satisfied that you've understand, recall the key information, move over the higher level thinking skills as application, analysis, evaluation, and creation questions. Some students like to add the fourth R step is react. Example of 170 SQ3R. Directions. Apply the SQ3R system section in chapter 1 of your textbooks. List your question marginal separate sheet of paper. Highlight the answer in the textbook. After you finish the section, evaluate the SQ3R survey question. Read, recite, and review. Work for you. Note how you might adapt. Highlighting effectively. Many students find with the reading with a pen or highlighter with a hand excellent with a way to continue with the active reading mindset with the focus with the attention with the highlighting and force with the decide with the importance and sort of key information from the less important material. Sorting idea with improve with both comprehension recall. Highlighting is also the excellent way to improve with your comprehension recall with the textbook assignments. Decide what with the highlight you must think about with the evaluate relative to the importance of the idea with the highlight most effectively. You with the guidelines analyze with the assignment. Preview the assignment to define what the type of learning is required with the help to determine how much and what type of the information needed to highlight. 2. Access your familiarity with the subject depending on the background knowledge we may need only highlight with only a little or a great deal. Do not waste time with the highlighting what you already know. Read first, then highlight. First, finish the paragraph self-contained section before the highlight. As you read the look of the signal of the organizational patterns, each idea may seem important first encounter, but you must see how it fits within the others before you can judge the relative importance. Use boldface headings. Headings and labels indicate overall topic of the section. Headings are serve as indicator of the important highlight. Highlight main ideas on only key supporting details. Avoid highlighting examples and secondary details. Avoid highlighting complete sentences. Highlight only enough for the highlight and make sense of you when you reread it. In the following section, note only the key words, phrases are highlighted. Now read only with the highlighted words. Can you grasp the key idea? Passage rocks. Categories reflect how they form. Ingenuous rocks, molten crustal material, cool, solidified, sedimentary rocks, eroded higher elevations, accumulated lower elevations, subject to high pressure, commenting materials to bind their grains together, metamorphic rocks, exposed to the great pressure and heat, more compact, crystalline. Alright, 7. Move quickly through the document as you highlight. If you understand what the paragraph section of the highlight should be fast and efficient. Develop a consistent system with highlighting. Decide with example to highlight with the main ideas, how you distinguish main idea with the details, how you with the highlight with the new terminology. Some students use a system of a signal and double highlighting bracket with the asterisk with the circle to distinguish various type of the information over the different colors, ink with a combination of pens and pencils. Use 15 to 25% rule of the thumb, although the amount with the highlight will vary from the course to course. With try to highlight more than 15 to 25% aim with the given the page. Expect to see with the figures that often meet the non-sorting idea with efficiently as possible. Oftentimes, it is meant you should choose with a different strategy for the reviewing of the material. But remember, the more you highlight, the smaller your time saved with the dividends will be as you review. The following expert provides an example of the effective highlighting. Organizational. Go international. Use licensed franchising. One organization given another right with a brand name, technology, product specifications, lump sum payment fees usually based on sale of difference licensing. Primarily manufacturer organization makes sell with another company's product. Franchising service organization that want to use another company's name. Operating methods. Word caution. Do not assume that highlighted is learned. You must process the information, organizing, expressing it in your own words, testing it periodically. In Chapter 2, you will learn mapping, summarizing, and can help accomplish these goals. Exercise 1.8, highlighting 1. Direction to read the following paragraphs, which have the highlight with the two different ways. Look at the highlighted version, then write your answer for the question filled with the spaces provided. Example A. Murders explosively mass murder with zero murders fascinate public and criminologists. The murder is the least common committed crime, receives the most. Murder is the least committed crime and receives the most attention. Murder trials capture attention. Nation. O.J. Simpson trial was one of the most watched television programs in history of the network of the Nielsen ratings. Example B. Murders in public and the least committed crime receive the most attention. Trials capture attention. Nation. Example A or B is better example of the effect of highlighting. I'd say, A because it tells us about his fascination. Why isn't highlighting his in the other example effective? It didn't make the inference of people and attentions towards murders. What is crime? Deviance versus crime. The most prisoners within incarcerated because of their 1.9 exercising highlighting 2. The direction highlighted with the following article. What is crime? What is crime? The deviance versus crime. The most private person incarcerated because of this broken law. How do you determine which behaviors are criminal? Deviance of the violation of the norms of society agreed with upon. For example, the teens dye with their hair with the neon colors would be considered the deviant in the most parts of the society, or some acts that may be considered socially deviant, like refusing bathing, for instance, that are not necessarily illegal, no matter how much you might wish they were. For something to be considered a crime, it has to be a violation of norms that have been written into law, going above speed limit. Example of the crime: sociologists will examine the criminology, scientifically study crime and deviance and social policy. Criminal justice system applies. What is deviant? Deviance refers to the violating of socially agreed upon norms, however, to determine what it is and what isn't considered deviant. For specific characteristics, socializing the divine deviance. Deviance linked to the time of the history chain of the deviation of the deviance is over the conservative deviant today. Maybe not to be deviant tomorrow. 100 years ago, it was conservative deviant for a woman to wear trousers. Today, is normal to the woman to dress in trousers. Deviance is linked to the cultural values, how we label the issue that determine the normal point of view. Cultural values come to the religious, political, economic, philosophical principle. For example, the Holland activity enthusia for the terminology ill with the mercy killing is legal with the sum of the circumstance of the United States. Enthusiasia is considered murder and is punished accordingly. Each culture defines enthusiasia differently. Deviance cultural universal, whether you can find with the deviance in every culture with the panel, with the regardless for the norm that society establishes. You always find with a smaller number of the nonconformists who will break the rules. Deviance for the social construct. Each society view actions differently when the society tolerates behavior that no longer deviant. For example, the prohibition in the 1920s, early 1930s made drinking alcohol legal in the United States, but today is normal. And this shows the picture of the green hair. How was that deviant to the crime? Street crime. Although there are many different types of the crime, but the most people to talk about with the crime they were likely talking about street crime refer to the many of the different types of the criminal acts, such as burglary, rape, and assault. The street crime has the focus of the most criminological research, but you wonder how much street crime actually exists. The next section will discuss the street crime and how it's measured. Crime statistics. After spending an hour watching the show like CSI, you think of the police are able to solve the crimes like what they do on TV. Unfortunately, real life is inconvenient as television. For example, when somebody stole the tires off my car, I asked the police officer I might get my wheels back. He said probably never. The kind of the crimes are difficult to solve. Uniform crime reports and show the natural crime visualization, show the picture of the crime artist on his car. Another aspect of the detective work with admitted from the television television, paperwork with the Office of the Information over the role of the video, understanding the criminal statistics, criminologists with the two parameters for the data with the mention of the administrative crime, the UCRS and the NTVS, the Federal Bureau of Investigation Uniform Crime Reports, or UCRs, and the official police statistics for the reported crime, National Crime Victimization Survey, NTVS, measure for the crime victimization by contacting representative samples of over 70,000 households within the United States. Your uniform crime reports only contain the data of the reported crimes, so when the car is reported as stolen, it becomes the uniform crime report statistic. The report over the list for the crime index next comes in the 8. Offenses measured for the crime with include the 4 violent offenses for the homicide, for the rape, for the robbery, for the aggravated assault, with the 4 property crime, with the bulk rage, larceny, theft, with the motor vehicle theft, with an arson. Criminologists understand many of the crime that unreported, so they all refer to the national crime. What was the national crime? National crime victimization surveys. Alright, National Crime Victim Surveys data always account for more than information for the Uniform Criteria Report, criminal report data. For example, the 2002 Uniform Criminal Report reported fewer than 12 million offenses. For the National Crime Violation Survey showed approximately 23 million crimes. This report with the criminologist rule of thumb, about half of the crimes committed would go unreported. Crime trend, the Uniform Crime Report and the National National Crime Violation Survey data can also be determined the crime trend of the trend of the change of the more constant of the crime rates for the change over the time of the variety of vast majority of the crime in the United States property over the crime in the 2006 with the property crime made of the 88% with all the reported crimes, whereas violent crimes constituted less than 12% of the tens are stark the contrast of the media portrayal of the crime. Your gender crime through history with the men with the traditional committed more of the crime and then women with the demographic characteristics of the street criminal with the United States. Some of they have not changed with much over time, and in fact 77% of the arrested men. Significant statistic becomes men make up less than 50% of the population. However, several of the other factors also figure criminal trends. Race and crime, although general difference of the criminal statistics are fairly easily distinguished in discussion. A link between the race and crime with the controversially with a major problem of long history with the racism in the United States. African Americans made up about 12% of the population, but represent the 27% of those the rest of the United States. Due to this disproportion of the representation suggests that African Americans commit more crime than the criminal justice system unfairly pursue them. Some argue with the police different enforcement practice with the responsible for the data, with the racial profiling with the controversial police practice of targeting criminals based on their race, with the show with the traffic police with a disproportionately stop people of color. Jeffrey Raymond suggests the police seek out the poor for arrest because of the poor are easier to catch and easier for the convict of the crimes. Wealthy people are highly expensive lawyers. Poor people might use the public defender system for the odds of the official statistics have the inherent racial bias becomes racial minorities disproportionately represented the poor in the United States. Social class and crime, although crime rates in high and poor neighborhoods does not necessarily mean that the people in lower class actually commit the more crime that makes the data on the link between the social class and criminal difficult to interpret. The number of studies have shown them that poor people arrested at high rate, but it does not make everyone with the more poor neighborhoods break the law, with the more likely to break the law. On the other side of the spectrum, the remaining show of the upper class of the crimes are not prosecuted at the same rate. For example, in all 50 states, the getting caught with the 5 grams of crack cocaine can earn up to 5 years in prison. However, the person who have the process is 500 grams of cocaine powder to receive the same sentence. So what is the difference for the people who make it for the crack possession tended to poor, while the people caught with the cocaine powder usually wealthy? Remain with the belief of the social class with a huge difference who gets caught with goes within prison. argues the law of that applied differently with the dangerous activities performed by the elite and are not evenly considered crimes. For example, the doctors who accidentally kill a patient during unnecessary surgery are not accused of manslaughter. Similarly, remains suggest that the white-collar crimes are not reported because of the people who want to avoid scandal. Furthermore, we do not keep an official record of the white-collar crimes, so there's no way of knowing exactly how much it occurs. Age in crime. Essentially, crime is your youngest person's game of the idea of support of the relation between the age and the crime that indicate the majority of the peak between the age of 15 and 25. After the point, they follow a slow but steady decrease throughout the life of the arrest data of the other cultural over the time and the history of the will support with the claim link between the age of the crime is very clear with the criminology according to the Stefner Testamizer of the Hayer 60% decrease of the crime rate of the 1980 and just attributable to the decrease of the total number of the 15 to 24-year-old with a clearly aged man with the discussion of crime. International comparison with street crime in order to gain the better perspective of the crime with the understanding of the social logic often for the make for the international comparison, make for the international comparison for the crime data with the certain compare problems with the research for therefore with the text I select with the country for the similar with the United States for the number of ways they are generally well for the all that keep the good crime. Here's a little potential complicating factors. One, crime numbers may or may not be accurate. Some countries deliberately skew their data to show lower crime rates in order to keep terrorism high. Two, legal definition of crime differ among nations. Some nations do not recognize the marital rape as crime. Others legalize drugs with illegal that are illegal in the United States. Different methods with collecting data can resolve the difference of the reported crime. Some of the nations have extraordinarily reliable data collection systems, but others do not. And four, cultural varies as does do its programs to prevent, punishing, and curb crime. United States, number one with a bullet. Why does the United States have the highest murder rate of the industrialized world? Some blame the easy access of the gun, the others claim the violent history of the nation. Several of the others argue with the level of inequality in our country. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear that U.S. citizens are 3 times more likely to murder compared with the people in the other developed nations. However, the graph below with a somewhat with a different picture of the violence regarding the international rates of the robbery and rape. The country is selected with a similar United States. Give it a quick way to compare with the crime of the United States with the other the country with the sea with the stab of the England, leave of the nation, robbery with the Kenya have the highest rate of the rates for the rape. The United States have the high rates of the bold, but clearly is not worse. Property crime with the president with a different picture for the second graph provided with the data with the four non-violent crime with the motor of the vehicle theft with the drug offense with the burglary. General speaking, the occurrence of the property crime are higher with the industrial nations than in the United States, and show the international violent crime rates and rates per 1,000. Green is robbery, red is homicide, and then rape is yellow, and then assault would be the biggest in the United States and England and Canada, while France, Germany, and Japan are pretty low. Shows another international version with Canada, England, France, Germany, and Japan with theft, motor vehicle, drug offenses, and burglary. These data leave with a mixed picture of the international comparison of the crime living in the United States with the creep of the eyes of the one might murder for the officer's creep of the chance of the being a victim of the most property crimes. Comparing international crime rates show the crime criminal with the industrial society. Some suggest that the curve of the becomes industrial societies have more higher value lightweight items such as iPad, laptop, with the easily stolen and sold with a noting. Annotation. 1A. Using annotation with the record thinking with in many situations highlighting thinking above sufficient meaning to identify what to learn doesn't give you the opportunity to commit with a react with the material for if you want to use the annotation effect with the reading profit to force you to help with the track with the comprehension as well with the idea of the table the 1-4 following the page suggests various type of the annotation marking with the political sign of the textbook chapter. Alright, we'll show the type of the annotation. An example, show the circling unknown words, really dressing on symmetry with circled, marked definitions. It was bracketed to say with the balance of power figures, some of the disequilibrium, marking example, another open bracket, and it showed the drawn out thought, and then number list ideas for cover the reasons or event, show the 1, 2, 3, and 4 as in order. as they occurred, number listed ideas, placing asterisks in the next important passages, putting question marks next to the confusing passages, making notes to yourself, making possible test items with a mark with a T, drawing arrows to show relationships, write comments noting disagreements, similarities, can terrorism prevented throughout with a similar balance? That's a comment noting disagreements or similarities, making summary statements, and that's a sum SUM bracket. Exercise 110 and noting 1, exercise 111 and noting 2. Alright, your summary or learning objective. Review for the strategy for the reading with the textbook. What the textbook features help with reading and learning with from the books. So the textbooks are designed with the work with the instructional lecture, with the provide with the reliable, accurate information, help with the practice your skill. Refer to table 1-1, page 31 through 32. List for the textbook features for the how to use them. Reading actively. What is active with the reading? Reading is thinking. Active reading is a problem that identifies an important idea of the reading selection, with the comparing and evaluating and applying them, and reading actively with the determining with the purpose of the reading assignment, and adjust your speed and suit with the purpose of the preview before reading. Why it is important to preview before you read. What does it entail? Previewing is mean with the familiarizing yourself with the content organization assignment before you read it. Previewing entails you with the title, subtitle, the headings, introductory, concluding paragraphs, key saying with the typographical aids. You get a sneak peek of what the reading selection. Effective reading, activate your background knowledge. Witness support with the activate background knowledge. Effective reading, connect with the background knowledge, which I already know with the topic. What with the reading, activate with the background knowledge makes your reading easier because you're already through and about with the top of the material. Easier to remember because you connect with the new information, which with already know what the topics become the more interesting because you connect them to your own experience. Check with the strength with the comparison. How do you check with the comparison? Check your comprehension. Even the comprehensive signals such as the level of the vocabulary, the ability to make the connection with among the ideas, read to determine how you understand the material. If you experience the low level of comprehension, judge the reading strategy. However, the dependent does your strength in comparison. To strengthen the comprehension with the ensure the reading of the area with the free of the distraction, rephrase with the paragraph of the idea with your own, reread with the complicated section, agree with the reading rate with the read sections, aloud, you with the question outlines, highlighting marginal notes you gave the reading, and assess your background and consult with the source if it's necessary. 1-6. Use survey question in 3. 3. Read, recite, and review. Or SQ3R. What are the steps of SQ3R? The SQ3R method involved with integrating reading and learning with the following steps. Survey the question, read, recite, and review. May also adapt the SQ3R method to how you learn and type of the material after the studying. Highly effective. What does the effective with the highlighting involve? With the highlighting most effectively should analyze the signing with the assess of the familiarity with the subject of the read. First, highlight boldface heading with the headings. Highlight main idea with the online key supporting details. Avoid highlighting complete sensitivity and notion of the record your thinking and notion you with the notion forces you able to keep your comprehension well as react to the ideas. Refer to the chapter page 54 example the different type of the notion. Chapter 2 Learning during and after reading.